Hi everyone and welcome back to another video. In this video I'm going to be continuing my series from 2024 on murderers who were jailed in a specific month of the year in England, looking in this video at March of 2024. And I'll go through what the people did, the name of the victim in the case, the sentence that they received, and then I'll try and pick out something noteworthy such as the judge's comments, the comments from the police, or the comments from the family of the victim. Welcome to my channel, Andy on Crime, where I talk about high-profile criminal cases and other aspects of criminal law in England and Wales. And if you are on other social media platforms, then please check me out. I am on TikTok, and my handle is AndyOnCrime1, and I'm also on Twitter or X, and my handle is AndyOnCrime. If you would like to support my channel, then you can become a member and click the join button down below where you can get some exclusive perks, or you can click the link in the description down below and sign up with NordVPN, where you can get a huge discount on a range of their plans, and by doing so you will be supporting my channel, so thank you. And then the final thing before we get into the video is just to remind anyone that if you are jailed for the offence of murder in England and Wales, you will receive a mandatory life sentence. The only question is how long the minimum term or tariff will be. That's the period that a person will spend in prison before they are eligible to apply to the parole board for consideration of being released. In really rare cases involving very serious matters, people can be given what's known as a whole life order. That means that they will never be released from prison, and there's one individual in this video who received such a sentence. So with all that being said, let's get into the video. At number 1 is Shaun Pendlebury, Ashana Studholme and Lisa Richardson, who were sentenced on the 1st of March. In September 2022, 35-year-old Shakira Spencer, a vulnerable mother of 2 living in West London, fell under the influence of her former neighbour, Studhome. Over several months, Shakira was brutally coerced, isolated and abused by Studhome, her partner Pendlebury and their friend Lisa Richardson. Evidence at trial revealed that Shakira was starved, beaten, forced into sex work and treated as a slave within her own home. The trio scalded her feet, fed her ketchup sachets, and subjected her to intense physical and emotional torture over an extended period. At times, Shakira was locked in a cupboard and forced to clean her abuser's home early in the morning. She lost significant weight, going from a healthy size 16 to a skeletal size 6, and endured scalding burns, blunt force trauma, and electric shocks via makeshift blowtorches. Around the 12th of September 2022, Shakira was beaten to the brink of death and transported in the boot of a car back to her flat. There, the killers locked her in a hallway cupboard and left her to die. Her decomposed body was discovered 2 weeks later. Police had only entered after neighbours reported maggots emerging from under her door. Police uncovered CCTV footage showing the 3 returning to Shakira's flat multiple times to clean and conceal evidence. Cell phone records included videos and messages of the torture, while bank transaction logs revealed that they used her money to buy cleaning supplies in an attempt to erase traces of their crime. At the Old Bailey in December 2023, a jury convicted Pendlebury, who was 25, Studhome, who was 39, and Richardson, who was 43, of both murder and preventing a lawful burial. Prosecutors and the judge described their actions as sadistic, calculating, and devoid of any remorse. On the 1st of March 2024, all 3 were sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 34 years. The judge, Angela Rafferty, King's Counsel, condemned their conduct as an orgy of violence that was marked by extreme torture and a total lack of empathy. Each of them also received an additional 5 years for preventing a lawful burial, which will run alongside their sentence for murder. At number 2 on the list is Marcus Osborne, who was sentenced on the 1st of March. On the 15th of May 2023, Osborne stabbed to death his former partner, Katie Heighton, in the front hall of the house that they used to share together. She was stabbed 99 times. Not content with killing her, Osborne then used Katie's phone to lure her new partner, Stephen Harnett, to the house. When Stephen arrived, Osborne stabbed him to death as he had Katie before. The house where the murders were committed had 4 children upstairs, and another victim was being held captive by Osborne at knife point. After the murders, Osborne then laughed and jeered before raping the woman, telling her it was the last time he was going to be having sex in a long time. Finally, Osborne called a neighbour over and showed her the bodies, much to her horror, with Osborne appearing to be proud of what he had done. Osborne was later arrested and charged with the murders of Katie Heighton, Stephen Harnett, and the false imprisonment and rape of an unnamed third female. Osborne pleaded guilty to all 4 offences. At the sentencing on the 1st of March 2024, the judge found that the motivation for both killings was sexual in nature and driven by sexual jealousy of Katie's new relationship with Stephen, and the judge also found that the murders involved overtly sexual acts by Osborne. As a result, the judge found that the murders were of exceptionally high seriousness and attracted a starting point of a whole life order. He was sentenced to 2 whole life orders, as well as a 10-year sentence for the rape of the other female. Marcus Osborne will never be released from prison. At number 3 is Joshua Jacques, who was sentenced on the 1st of March. In the early hours of the 25th of April 2022, 29-year-old Joshua Jacques carried out a brutally violent stabbing at his girlfriend's home in Bermondsey in South London. He killed his girlfriend Samantha Drummonds, who was 27, her mother Tanisha Ofori Akufo, who was 45, her grandmother Dolet Hill, who was 64, and Dolet's partner Denton Burke, who was 58. The scenes were described as a bloodbath, with Denton found at the foot of the stairs, and Samantha found with her mother and grandmother together in the kitchen. During the attack, Jacques was reportedly under the influence of alcohol and drugs, including smoking approximately 3 grams of high-potency skunk cannabis per day. He later described the killings as a sacrifice and showed signs of extreme mental disturbance, and at the scene he was found naked, praying fervently in the bathroom and crying out religious-themed pleas. Police were called following neighbour reports, and they found Jacques at the scene. He was subsequently arrested and stood trial at the Old Bailey in December 2023. Jacques admitted to manslaughter but denied murder, claiming diminished responsibility due to mental health issues. Following a 3-week trial, the jury took just 2 hours to find him guilty of 4 counts of murder. On the 1st of March 2024, the judge sentenced Jacques to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 46 years. The judge explicitly linked the severity of the crimes to his drug-induced psychosis and issued a stark warning about the impact of cannabis. A subsequent review by the Chief Inspector of Probation revealed serious failings in supervision. At the time, he had been on probation for a previous drug offence and was required to engage with drug treatment. No intervention was arranged, and there were missed opportunities to recall him to custody. Concerns regarding his mental health went unaddressed, and no follow-up risk assessment was completed. The probation service responded with a plan to implement 8 key recommendations to safeguard against similar failures. At number 4 is Ian Connell, who was sentenced on the 6th of March. In the early hours of the 22nd of August 2023, the police were called to a suspected burglary at a home on Ainsworth Road in Radcliffe in Greater Manchester. A postman had witnessed a man climbing through a kitchen window and emerging with a white labradoodle named Layla. Inside the house, officers discovered 45-year-old Donald Prentice Patience, a loving father of 3 and statistician, found deceased at the foot of his stairs. He had been strangled and wrapped in a duvet. A post-mortem examination estimated his time of death at around the 19th of August. 39-year-old Connell, a crack and heroin addict, was arrested nearby with Layla and Mr. Patient's personal documents. He falsely claimed his friend had given him permission to enter and take the dog. Connell spun multiple inconsistent stories about his entry and Donald's whereabouts. A witness overheard him confessing and CCTV, phone records and witness testimony pieced together a picture of a premeditated betrayal. The court heard that Connell had befriended Donald, who he called Boss, performing odd jobs and walking his dog. Their relationship soured when the financial support abruptly stopped, leading to a fatal fit of rage. Following a week-long trial at Manchester Crown Court, a jury unanimously found Connell guilty of murder on the 29th of February 2024. The evidence of betrayal and strangulation under the weight of addiction was compelling in the prosecution's argument. On the 6th of May 2024, Connell was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 19 years. The judge condemned the callousness and exploitation of a vulnerable victim, stressing that this was not a property crime, but a deeply personal and violent betrayal. At number 5 is Sheldon Rodriguez, who was sentenced on the 8th of March. Rodriguez, who was aged 30 and was working as a cargo handler near Heathrow, developed a deep obsession with his housemate, 39-year-old Stephanie Hansen, after she rejected his romantic advances and began a relationship with a married co-worker from Swissport. The feelings of jealousy and rejection drove him to monitor her every move. Over the course of roughly 7 years, Rodriguez covertly installed listening devices throughout their shared home. Investigators determined that he had spent approximately 158 hours spying on her activities from behind hidden electronics, closely monitoring her relationship with her boyfriend. He also sent threatening messages, once posing as celebrity chef Jamie Oliver, and contacted employers to complain about her boyfriend. Rodriguez's acts included paying someone £100 to follow her partner, evidencing not just obsession, but active stalking. On the morning of the 30th of December 2022, after discovering via his spy devices that Stephanie's boyfriend had been at the house, Rodriguez returned from his night shift and exploded with rage. He brutally attacked Stephanie in her bedroom, stabbing her around 20 times in the neck and repeatedly bashing her head and face with a hairdryer and a large fan. Stephanie tragically died at the scene. After the killing, Rodriguez tried to shift the blame onto her boyfriend, claiming that he'd found the body. He attempted to explain injuries on his hands as coming from carving a chicken. CCTV evidence, however, showed that they were sustained post-attack. He even sent messages from her phone to suggest she was elsewhere. In January 2024, Rodriguez was convicted of murder at the Old Bailey. The prosecution showcased overwhelming evidence, surveillance recordings, forensic injuries, and his extensive campaign of stalking and intimidation, and a jury found his actions to be deliberate and sustained. On the 8th of March 2024, the judge sentenced Rodriguez to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 25 years. During the sentencing, the judge condemned his campaign of harassment and intimidation and described the attacks as sustained and ferocious. Stephanie's mother spoke directly to him, saying, "You took her life and you stole her future." At number 6 is Alfie Hammett and Joshua Howell, who were sentenced on the 11th of March. On the 17th of January 2023, 18-year-old Raymond James Quigley from Wymondham in Norfolk, also known as drill rapper James, was walking through Westgate Street in Ipswich when he was fatally stabbed in broad daylight. He staggered into a nearby shop, but tragically collapsed and died from his wounds. CCTV footage captured 19-year-old Hammet running directly at Raymond with a knife and stabbing him multiple times, while 18-year-old Howell chased Raymond's friends through a nearby clothing store, again with a machete. The court heard that the attack was retribution linked to a deep-seated gang rivalry. Raymond was associated with the Only the Money gang, Hammett with Third Side based in Norwich, and Howell with the IP3 gang from Ipswich, with the assault seen as a revenge killing. After a 5-week trial at Ipswich Crown Court, both defendants were convicted on the 26th of January 2024 of murder and possession of an offensive weapon. The prosecutor described the incident as a targeted attack carried out in retribution for another gang-related killing. The officer in the case called the crime a horrific and completely senseless act of extreme violence committed in full public view. On the 11th of March 2024 at Ipswich Crown Court, Hammet was handed a life sentence with a minimum term of 24 years, while Howell received a life sentence with a minimum term of 20 years. At number 7 is Kieran Claffey, Leighton Tabone and Justin Roach, who was sentenced on the 12th of March. On the 25th of February 2023, 64-year-old Mark Nope opened his flat door at Warburton Road in Southampton, expecting a delivery, to discover instead a group of masked intruders. The men, who believed they were breaking into a nearby apartment, threatened him with a gun and stabbed him in the chest. Mark managed to dial 999 before succumbing to his injuries less than an hour later. The group had intended to target flat number 157, believed to contain cash and cannabis. Unbeknownst to them, they had entered the wrong door, flat 147, and CCTV footage and testimony revealed that they forced their way into Mark's home, brandishing weapons and demanding valuables before the fatal stabbing. Hampshire Police, alongside the Crown Prosecution Service in Wessex, built their case using CCTV, phone data, witness accounts and DNA evidence. Prosecutors argued that the defendants had planned the robbery and were fully responsible for the death, even if only one man delivered the fatal blow. After a trial at Winchester Crown Court, Claffey, Tabone and Roach were all convicted of murder. Two other men, Bradley Odell and Aaron Morgan, were found guilty of manslaughter and conspiracy to rob, and two additional individuals had earlier pleaded guilty to the offence of conspiracy to rob. In court, Mark's family described him as kind, much loved and cherished, and his sister-in-law said that the tragedy injected poison into their beautiful innocent lives, marking a void still felt nearly a year on. On the 12th of March 2024 at Winchester Crown Court, Claffey was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 29 years. Tabone and Roach each received a life sentence with a minimum term of 27 years. At number 8 is Lee Clarke, who was sentenced on the 12th of March. On New Year's Eve in 2022, a dog walker discovered human remains at Oakwood Pond in Harlow in Essex. Over the following days, police uncovered more body parts, some dismembered, in several local ponds and reservoirs, prompting a major murder investigation. Forensic analysis positively identified the deceased as 59-year-old Philip Lewis, known locally as Scottish Phil, who had disappeared in mid-November of 2022 and had not been reported missing. On the 4th of January 2023, Essex police arrested 56-year-old Lee Clarke at his home in Harlow. Investigators discovered bloodstains, power tools and evidence of attempts to dispose of a body, alongside CCTV footage showing Clarke removing large bags from his flat. Clarke denied wrongdoing, claiming the blood was from an innocuous mirror accident. However, after a 4-week trial at Chelmsford Crown Court, a jury unanimously found him guilty of murder on the 8th of March 2024. Detective Superintendent Rob Kirby described Clarke as a killer and a coward, condemning his refusal to disclose why he killed Scottish Phil or where all of the body parts were hidden, deepening the victim's family's anguish. Philip's son, Connell Lewis, paid tribute to his father, depicting him as a kind, caring and friendly man whose absence will forever change the family. On the 12th of March 2024, Clarke was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 19 years. At number 9 is Kyle Gordon, who was sentenced on the 14th of March. In the early hours of the 17th of March 2018, 23-year-old student Russell Jordan Jones stood in South Street, Ponders End in Enfield, socialising with friends. A group of masked men armed with a sawn-off shotgun and knives suddenly approached and launched a brutal attack. Russell was shot once in the abdomen and stabbed 12 times. His friend Karun Singh was also stabbed, but he survived. Investigators concluded that the attack was gang-motivated. CCTV footage and phone data revealed the men had driven around enemy territory searching for rival members, ultimately targeting victims based on mistaken identity. Russell and his friends were not involved in any gang activity. Following arrests, 3 men, Bilkener, Quayanu and Williams, were convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment, with minimum terms between 25 and 29 years. Gordon also faced a trial at the Old Bailey, but the jury failed to reach a verdict during his first hearing in June 2023. Gordon, who was aged 24 at the time of the retrial, stood trial again in March of 2024. After a thorough presentation of the evidence, including weapons used, CCTV footage and phone records, the jury convicted him of murder and grievous bodily harm to Singh, as well as possession of a firearm with intent. The prosecutor described the attack as a calculated and deliberate hunting of rival gang members. Russell's mother, Stephanie Saunders, delivered a powerful statement during sentencing, stating her son was defenceless and very unaware of what was about to happen. She shared that she can never forgive those responsible for taking his life in the most brutal, vicious and senseless way. On the 14th of March 2024, the judge sentenced Gordon to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 28 years. He also received concurrent sentences of 9 years for causing grievous bodily harm and 14 years for firearm possession, both to be served alongside his murder term. At number 10 is Shannon Grant, who was sentenced on the 21st of March. On the 22nd of June 2023, 40-year-old Natasha Moraes was discovered dead in her flat in Whetstone in Leicestershire. Her body was hidden beneath an Ottoman-style bed, naked and bound with cable ties, showing signs of brutal torture, including burns, and having suffered at least 25 separate injuries. Grant, who was aged 27, had been in a relationship with Natasha after her previous partner had died in a car crash. Prosecutors said that Grant was motivated by financial gain, specifically targeting her inheritance and torturing her to obtain money. A text sent from her phone asking for £2,000 fueled suspicion from her family. Concerned by the suspicious message, Natasha's mother and brother visited her flat. They encountered a man, later identified to be Grant, who refused entry. Police forced their way in and found her body shortly before 10 p.m. Grant had fled Leicester but was later arrested in Coventry, where police also seized a sawn-off shotgun and personal items belonging to Natasha. DNA forensics played a pivotal role in the case, and Grant's DNA was found on the cable ties used to bind Natasha, and cameras showed him purchasing identical ties in Coventry just hours before the murder. His fingerprints were also present on the window ledge from which he escaped. During the investigation and trial, Grant fabricated a story that intruders had burst in and killed Natasha whilst holding him at gunpoint, but the jury rejected his version of events, finding the forensic and CCTV evidence overwhelmingly linking him to the attack. In February of 2024, Grant was convicted of murder at Leicester Crown Court, and on the 21st of March 2024, Grant was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 34 years, and during sentencing the judge emphasised that only a life sentence was appropriate given the brutality and premeditated nature of the crime. At number 11 is Lucas Dwit, who was sentenced on the 22nd of March. In April 2023, Essex couple Stephen and Carol Baxter, who were 61 and 64 respectively, from West Mersey, were found dead on Easter Sunday in their conservatory armchairs. Initial appearances suggested natural causes, but further investigations revealed that they had been poisoned with fentanyl, a powerful synthetic opioid. The couple had trusted Luke DeWitt, who was 34 and an IT professional, who over the course of a decade working with their Sheramat company had ingratiated himself into their lives. Prosecutors described him as a friend and valued assistant until his true intentions emerged. From 2021 onwards, DeWitt created around 20 fake online identities, including a bogus Florida doctor and a support group contact, to manipulate Carol's thyroid treatment. He also tortured and drugged her with pills containing drugs to simulate illness and decline. On Good Friday in April 2023, Dwit administered lethal doses of fentanyl extracted from patches originally prescribed to his late father. He spiked Carol and Stephen's drinks, monitored their collapse via hidden cameras, and left them to die as he calmly left the scene. The morning after their deaths, Dwit wrote a fake will on his phone, naming himself as director of both Stephen and Carol's business and the named inheritor, revealing his endgame, an exploitation of their trust. He was convicted unanimously at Chelmsford Crown Court in March of 2024, and Detective Superintendent Rob Kirby of the Essex Police described him as one of the most dangerous men he'd encountered, fearing he would have killed again without apprehension. On the 22nd of March 2024, the judge sentenced Lucas Dwit to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 37 years. The judge commented that Dwit's actions showed a desire to control others and described the killing as cruel, senseless, and calculated. At number 12 is Richard Basson, who was sentenced on the 27th of March. On the 21st of September 2023, Basson, who was aged 45, shot his 37-year-old partner, Carrie Slater, in the forehead with an illegal semi-automatic handgun at their home in Long Clawson in Leicestershire. Initially, Basson claimed during the emergency call that Carrie had been stabbed by him with a pool cue during a dispute over half a cigarette. Police and paramedics responded at around 6:45 p.m. to Basson's 999 call, finding Carrie seriously injured. Basson remained outside the bungalow, erratic and uncooperative, before eventually admitting to causing her injuries as something to do with a pool cue. Initially arrested for grievous bodily harm, further investigations revealed a gunshot wound. Officers discovered a semi-automatic pistol in the couple's garden, along with live and spent ammunition. Hospital scans confirmed Carrie died from a bullet wound to the head, and prosecutors later uncovered that Basson had fired 2 shots, one that missed and hit the wall, while the other had struck Carrie fatally, and he then attempted to dispose of the evidence. Throughout the investigation, Basson spun a web of lies, claiming that Carrie had ran into a pool cue and that she had a carving knife despite a lack of supporting evidence. He also tried to conceal the bullet and firearm after the shooting. At Leicester Crown Court in March of 2024, Basson pleaded not guilty to murder, but admitted to the firearms and ammunition offences. A jury rejected his version of events and found him guilty of murder on the 26th of March 2024. Carrie's sisters described her as a fun, loving young lady and said, "Our hearts are full of pain and our lives feel empty." And Detective Inspector Emma Matz praised the police's response and noted that Basson had showed no remorse. On the 27th of March 2024, the judge sentenced Basson to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 32 years. During sentencing, he described Basson's actions as coercive, dominant, and controlling, and noted his deceitful behaviour and motive to evade responsibility. He was also given a concurrent 6-year and 30-month sentence for the offences relating to the firearms and the ammunition.